Okay, guys, so next to the stage we have school number 41 from Novouralsk, Russia.
Good day. My name is Ekaterina.
I'm Maria.
My name is Igor, and we are from gymnasium number 41, Novouralsk. My name is Igor, and we are from gymnasium number 41, Novouralsk, Russia. In our presentation, we focused on the most imminent nuclear threats dealt with the Iranian nuclear program. Several issues regarding the nuclear program of Iran have been rising during the last 40 years, and they are still of current interest today. Since the dawn of time, people have witnessed natural events, and among them, such a weird phenomenon as tornado. It's one of the most violent nature phenomena leading to destruction and damages to people's lives. In our present time, the world is at risk of the nuclear tornado. The nuclear tornado happens when instability of the political situation in Iran leads to global turbulence. While the cause of the nuclear tornado is not a mystery, the main problem is to predict when and where it's likely to come and make it less destructive.
At a ceremony to mark the 40th anniversary of the revolution that transformed Iran into an Islamic republic, President Hassan Rouhani proclaimed the country's military strength and stated that foreign powers would never dominate Iran again. During the whole day, the crowd at Azadi Square chanted and yelled, "Death to America!" People dared to burn down American flags. Obviously, it was a display of anger in response to Trump's administration's policy. The US withdrawal from the Iranian nuclear deal was a step which could weaken the stability of the joint comprehensive plan of actions, as well as control of the Iranian nuclear program. Rouhani's present remarks implied that Iran was ready to increase its nuclear weapon potential. So the country is going to break the rules of the JCPOA, and thereby Iran can continue enriching uranium and produce nuclear weapons. As a fact, the JCPOA, concluded in 2015, has begun to lose its relevance since 2017-2018, when the US President Donald Trump announced that the USA ceased its participation in the nuclear deal. Apparently, Rouhani's recent statements undermine the JCPOA conception, thus providing new escalation of the Iranian crisis. So the enhancing spin of the nuclear tornado, absorbing countries both globally and regionally, calls for immediate actions. Nevertheless, let's make a retrospective in the Iranian nuclear program to understand how it developed in the second half of the 20th century.
At the beginning of the Iranian nuclear program, the nuclear tornado was in the process of its formation. Iran first established its nuclear program in 1957 under Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, with an agreement on the nuclear cooperation with the United States under the Atoms for Peace program. Following the US President Dwight Eisenhower doctrine, in 1953 the United States launched an Atoms for Peace program that supplied equipment and information to schools, hospitals, and research institutions within the United States and throughout the world. Iran signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1968 on the day it opened for signature. During the 1970s, the United States was actively contributing to the nuclear program of Iran. In 1976, the US President Gerald Ford signed a directive offering Tehran a chance to buy and operate a US-built reprocessing facility for extracting plutonium from the nuclear reactor fuel. The participation of the United States and even Western European governments in the Iranian nuclear program continued until the 1979 Iranian Revolution that toppled the last Shah of Iran. Thus, a cloud of warm air, called the Iranian nuclear program, was mingled with a cloud of cold air, called Islamic Revolution, forming as a result an unprecedented nuclear tornado.
As a fact, Iran-Russia relations won't deal with the Iranian nuclear program until the early 1990s. In the end of 1980s, Moscow-Tehran relations witnessed an increase in commercial and diplomatic relations, and Iran soon even began purchasing weapons from Russia. In the 1990s, Russia formed the Joint Research Organization with Iran, providing Iran with Russian nuclear experts and technical information. Russia and Iran signed the bilateral nuclear cooperation agreements in August 1992. In the follow-up agreements in 1995, Russia agreed to complete construction of the Bushehr 1 nuclear power plant. Dark clouds gathered over Iran. The nuclear tornado was going through a life cycle of maturation. The Islamic Revolution in 1979 dramatically changed the situation in the US-Iranian relations. The Islamic Revolution and the seizure of the US embassy resulted in a severing of the US-Iranian ties and damaged the Iranian relationship with the West. As a result, the Iranian nuclear projects were interrupted. In 1981, Iranian officials concluded that the country's nuclear development had to be continued. In 1984, as a reprisal, the US Department of State included Iran to its list of state sponsors of terrorism, effectively imposing the first sanctions on Tehran. However, Iran was still engaged in nuclear weapons production. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency reports, Iran conducted experiments during the 1980s and the early 1990s related to uranium conversion, heavy water production, and nuclear reactor fuel fabrication. As you see, it was the US and other West European countries that invested their funds in order to develop the Iranian nuclear program, exclusively for peaceful purposes. But such contribution in the extension of the Iranian nuclear program finally turned against them.
The nuclear tornado needed energy to increase in strength and sustained itself at that time. The thunderstorm, that is the harbinger of the nuclear tornado, started. The wind began blowing. The international community has actively attempted to regulate the Iranian crisis since 2003. In September of 2003, the International Atomic Energy Agency first reported that Iran had not declared enrichment activities. This organization stated that enrichment could be used to produce uranium in order to manufacture nuclear weapons. Although Iran denied that accusation, the country was persuaded to sign and implement the additional protocol to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in December of 2003. In 2005, Iran rejected the EU3's long-term agreement because Tehran considered that the proposal was heavy on demands, light on incentives, and didn't incorporate Iran's proposals. As a reprisal, by early 2007, the UN adopted resolutions 1737 and 1747, imposing sanctions on Iran for its failure to suspend its enrichment-related activities. These sanctions prohibited countries from transferring sensitive nuclear and missile-related technology to Iran and required that all countries freeze the assets of 10 Iranian organizations for their involvement in programs. Such situation required comprehensive solutions, which were in process until 2014. The nuclear tornado increased the wind speed, and the spinning effect was ready to begin. The main challenge was how to make the nuclear tornado less of a danger for the world community.
The P5+1, or E3+3, is a special organization consisted of the United States, France, Germany, China, Russia, and Great Britain. The negotiations between Iran and the P5+1 have started since 2005. The aim of this forum was to make sure that Iran didn't develop nuclear weapon, but at the same time, the P5+1 recognized that Iran could hold peaceful nuclear activity. The negotiators for the P5+1 and Iran met in Geneva and Vienna in October and November of 2013 to discuss the basic parts of a possible framework for resolving questions about the Iranian nuclear program. Thus, On the 24th of November, in Vienna, the foreign ministers of Iran and the P5+1 agreed to a 6-month temporary deal called the Joint Plan of Action that involved the freezing of key provisions of the Iranian nuclear program in exchange for a decrease in sanctions in order to provide time for negotiations for a permanent agreement. The President of the United States, Barack Obama, called the agreement the important first step. So the Joint Plan of Action was an intermediate step to the next nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. These activities seemed to make the nuclear tornado dying out, but only for a very short period of time.
The document states, the JCPOA will ensure that Iran's nuclear program will be exclusively peaceful and mark a fundamental shift in the approach to this issue. The agreement implied general obligations that Iran must accomplish during a certain period of time. First, the JCPOA required Iran to reduce operational centrifuges at the Natanz enrichment facility from 19,000 to 5,060 until 2025. The Fordo enrichment facility would be converted to research and development and would not enrich uranium for a period of 15 years, having its centrifuges reduced to 1,044 machines. Iran agreed to ratify the additional protocol in addition to its comprehensive safeguards agreement and enable IAEA inspectors unprecedented access to its nuclear facilities. In addition, Iran signed one more agreement with IAEA to resolve any questions the agency still had concerning the possible military dimensions of its nuclear program. As a result, Iran got, first of all, sanctions relief. It implied some provisions. Iran acquired access to the international banking system, economic reconstruction, access to restricted funds, travel bans on individuals lifted, arms embargo expired in 5 years, and ballistic missile technology embargo expired in 8 years. Finally, the JCPOA would allow Iran to obtain the materials it needed to operate its nuclear facilities under the guidelines of the international nuclear supply regimes, such as the Nuclear Suppliers Group. The JCPOA was considered an efficient measure based on cooperation and collaboration between countries. Friendly relationships between 6 countries could provide accomplishment of nuclear commitments. However, someone decided to withdraw and thereby to trouble the nuclear deal.
Donald Trump and his pre-elective slogan, "Make America Great Again," implied intransigent the US policy towards other European countries. So Iran didn't become an exception. On the 8th of May in 2018, Donald Trump announced that the USA would cease implementing the JCPOA and begin to impose the nuclear-related sanctions on Iran again. He claimed that Iran continued to develop nuclear weapons, neglecting the JCPOA. So what provisions didn't satisfy Donald Trump apart from the whole spirit of the deal? Donald Trump criticized the JCPOA because it gave Iran several particular advantages. He was concerned about the expiration date. According to the document, the deadline expires in 2031, but the US president desired to make it unlimited. His explanation was related to a supposition that after the expiration date, Iran would continue to increase its nuclear potential. Besides, Donald Trump insisted on prohibition of ballistic missile production. Nevertheless, Trump's statement caused a wide resonance and, of course, enhanced the problem of the Iranian nuclear program. It would seem that, thanks to the nuclear deal, turbulence caused by the tornado began to wane, but one unexpected step, a daring statement, provoked strengthening of the nuclear tornado again. A new round of turbulence was again ready to envelope the whole world.
The conception of the nuclear deal with Iran had both proponents and opponents. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, claimed that the JCPOA is a rudiment of lie and naivety. The British ex-Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, said he regretted the United States' decision to exit the deal. He also added that the United States' decision made no change to the British assessment that the agreement was vital for the British national security and the stability of the Middle East. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, marked the necessity of the JCPOA. He said that during the talks in November of 2018, Russia and France confirmed their common positions on the JCPOA. They appealed for the remaining parties to make it possible to keep the deal afloat. However, many United States statesmen agree with Trump's and Netanyahu's point of view. They strongly oppose this foolish, as they said, deal with Iran. Other signatories to the JCPOA have reiterated their commitment to the deal because, in their opinion, the JCPOA is an urgent step to prevent turbulence of the Iranian nuclear program. These conflicting and discrepant opinions and statements made it impossible to keep the nuclear tornado less dangerous. More countries were going to be engulfed by it.
After the USA had suspended its participation in the nuclear deal, Donald Trump announced that anyone doing business with Iran won't be doing business with the United States. The US, after the withdrawal, reimposed sanctions aimed at curbing Iranian oil exports, and Trump's administration has warned Moscow against any actions that could help the Islamic Republic evade the measures. Meanwhile, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that the US sanctions on Iran were not legitimate. In the summer of 2018, the USA imposed new sanctions against Moscow, and the US State Department included Russia, together with Iran, China, and North Korea, in a list of potential threats to the US security. In this case, we see an obvious confrontation between the USA and Russia, caused by contradictions about the nuclear deal. The Iranian professor Haider Massoudi stated that there was a wide range of approaches in the world community regarding Russian relations with both the West and Iran. Firstly, the Iranian official conservative approach would prefer Russia to be a full adversary of the USA in the Iranian nuclear issue. This confrontation would be a common ground for the Iran-Russia security cooperation. Secondly, the Iranian intellectual liberal approach anticipates the ultimate alliance between Russia and the USA. Anticipates ultimate alliance between Iran, Russia, and the Western countries. They prove that Russia and the Western countries have vast areas for cooperation and collaboration in the future. Finally, the Iranian academic nationalist approach favors a limited partnership between the USA and Russia as the best option for Iran.
Iran and Israel have been adversaries since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Iran has been accused of sponsoring the terrorist attacks against the Israeli targets around the world. In the last few years, tensions between Iran and Israel appeared to escalate, increasing the possibility of a wider conflict. This confrontation was actually caused by the nuclear deal with Iran. Currently, neither Tehran nor Jerusalem regards a full-scale conflict as its strategic interest. Iran will seek to consolidate its military presence in Syria, and Israel will try to prevent it. They will keep testing each other. Their military operations will be firm, but measured.
The current situation with the Iranian nuclear program and the so-called nuclear deal definitely requires decisive measures. We are ready to present a draft version of the updated JCPOA, which will indicate those provisions that are the most controversial and questionable in the international community at the present time. Once again, we emphasize that we are not proposing a radically new agreement. We are trying to make some adjustments to the old deal. Thus, we intend to preserve the value of the JCPOA, which is of critical importance now. So our options are: number one, under the current agreement, Iran can enrich 3.67% uranium-235 only at the Natanz reactor for 15 years. That is from 2016 to 2031. We believe that the period of the uranium enrichment for Iran should be reduced to 8 years. But at the same time, Iran should be provided with the opportunity to purchase uranium from other countries participating in the transaction. In addition, the International Monetary Fund could grant a long-term loan. Such measure would strengthen the financial capacity of the Islamic Republic. The uranium purchases should not exceed 100 kilograms per year and should be controlled and certified by a separate IAEA protocol. Number two, under the current agreement, the Arak reactor would not be used to produce plutonium for the development of nuclear weapons. We agree to this position, but propose to turn the Arak reactor into a research facility for the sustainable development of the uranium isotopes. Number three, we propose to extend the duration of the Joint Commission from 25 years under the current agreement to 30 years. Number four, the production of ballistic missiles is one of the factors that influenced the United States' withdrawal from the nuclear deal. We propose the creation of an organization on the basis of the Joint Commission, which consists of the P5+1 member states, to monitor the production of nuclear warheads. Thus, this measure will prevent the development of any secret nuclear programs. The joint efforts of countries should contribute to lessening and finally minimize the existing risk that the nuclear tornado turns into global catastrophe. Thank you for your attention. We are ready to answer your questions.